But here in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean, we get ready for the scary hurricane season that is going to come and impact on top of all of this, and we're hoping to be more prepared than not. And to help us understand how we can be better prepared and how they're preparing to deal with the situation, we have Major General Rodney Smart, the CEO of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, on the line, as well as Jerry David, Senior Disaster Management Coordinator at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Robert. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
How are you guys doing this morning?
I think we just lost your volume there.
Are you hearing me now, Major?
All right, I think we just came back.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's get into it one time. What has the ODPM been doing in preparation for the 2020 wet and hurricane seasons?
All right, well, let me start by saying thank you very much for having us, and good morning to your listening and your viewing public. Well, the purpose of this morning is to raise awareness of the critical need for us in Trinidad and Tobago to become better prepared to overcome the challenges of this year's hurricane season. Of course, all of this while dealing with the COVID-19 environment. Also, I think it's important that we bring awareness that we live in a multi-hazard environment, and therefore mentally and physically, we must be prepared for all the other hazards that we may face, for example, an earthquake. So what the ODPM has been doing is we've been bringing together the principal disaster management agencies as well as the support agencies. We've done 3 tabletop wargaming exercises so far. And the whole idea is about exercising everyone in an integrated space. So the principal agencies that I speak of are the same disaster management units that Mr. David had, that are the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, the Fire Service, the Police Service, the Defense Force, and also all the other support agencies. Another tabletop exercise. You know, we use to guide the scenarios, the information that the Met Service has put in the public domain. And that information that I speak of is that we are to expect, or there is an 85% chance of an above normal wet season this year. So lots of rain. But also there's the possibility that in this corridor, we could expect 2 hurricanes. Now I say in this corridor because not that it is going to impact Trinidad and Tobago, but in the southern corridor, we can expect 2 hurricanes.
And Major General, you know, in this time of COVID-19 as well, you know, compounding everything else, what are some of the guidelines that citizens should adhere to at this time in preparedness for the hurricane and wet season?
All right, so in general, what we want to say to the person, and very critical here, is that you must be prepared. We must continue applying the guidelines that the Ministry of Health has given us. And what we like to say to people, there are 4 areas we really wanted to focus on. Adding into that, the challenges we face in this new environment that we are dealing with. So stay informed. And that's why we are on the air this morning. We want to spread the message. We want you to understand that alongside what we're dealing with this pandemic, you now have to prepare yourself, prepare your family, prepare your community for this hurricane season, which could be a challenge for us. So staying informed is important.
Definitely.
Also, make a plan.
All right.
Have an emergency plan. Don't wait until something happens and then you're now trying to get a plan. Put into your mental state. I must have a plan. I must have a plan for myself. I must have a plan for my family. If I'm a business owner, I must have a plan for my business. If one thing COVID-19 has taught us is that we must have continuity of operations plans, and we must have a plan for the community. because one home isn't affected when the floods come. A community is affected. Also, we want to emphasize having an emergency kit. Have a kit at home. And the usual items that you're going to have in the kit, make sure your kit could last for 72, could allow you to last without support for 72 hours. And we're speaking about having items such as food, water, medical items. In this COVID-19 environment, let me emphasize, make sure please and have some additional face masks, because if it is that you have to be evacuated to a shelter, you want to make sure that you do not infect anyone or vice versa. No one impact you. And the final point I would like to say with regard to individuals is get involved. Don't stay to yourself. Don't put yourself in a bubble, but get yourself involved in what is happening in your community. And a good way to do that is through the community emergency response teams that have been developed by the Ministry of Rural Development and local government. So please get yourself involved.
All right. And I want to, Jerry David, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear, sir.
Fantastic. I just wanted to know, how has the coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic, has it affected the ability of the Ministry of Rural Development and local government to be able to put things in place properly? How has that affected the planning process leading up to this wet season?
Affecting the planning process is not so much so. And that the flagship program of the ministry, when it comes to preparing communities, is, as the CEO of the ODPM just intimated, it's the Community Emergency Response Team. Now, we were not able to do that because of COVID, because CERT is very, I always say, very touchy. You're doing search and rescue, you're doing disaster medical operations, you're doing fire suppression, and that requires quite a fair amount of interaction with individuals. So what we're doing now is that we are developing a platform, a learning management system where people can, where we can actually do it online. COVID has caused us to change the way we do things, and this is one of them. We had focused this year on shelters, shelter managers, and evacuations. And because of this, we wanted to do the shelter managers and management training. Again, because of COVID, we have been able to do it virtually. So that as of yesterday, we had 816 persons, 816 persons who registered to do online that shelter managers program.
Wow.
The practical part, we will simulate and do it through Facebook Live so that the participants will see how we actually set up a COVID compliant shelter. Apart from that, the normal work of the corporations within the confines of COVID has progressed, and as the hurricane season comes on, we are focusing and telling individuals, know where you live. If you live in a vulnerable location, if you live near a river, a ravine, a lagoon, then you must know and recognize that, hey, if I'm living here, I've had a history of flooding, then I must be prepared. I must be prepared to evacuate if it comes to that, and I must know where my shelter is. And preparation means, and it doesn't take a lot. You think, people think they have to buy a lot of stuff. No, you can get a knapsack, and you put all those items in that knapsack. Your torchlight with batteries, your radio, your food, your canned foods. You sure you have enough water for 3 days, 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days, and things like this. That's important because the strength of the preparedness of a nation is dependent upon the strength of the preparedness of the individual and the family. And I always ask individuals when they ask me, is Trinidad and Tobago prepared? I ask the question, are you prepared as an individual? So the sum total of the preparedness of all the individuals makes the country a better prepared place.
Definitely. Now, Jerry David, from your seat as Senior Management Coordinator of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, rural areas tend to have unique circumstances, especially in the times of disaster. What do you think are some of the main challenges that rural areas would face when it comes to disaster preparedness?
Well, the history of Trinidad over the last 10 years in terms of the impact of hazards is primarily that of flooding. When we consider rural areas, you're talking about Mayara, Rio Claro, we have had experienced flooding in that area. Areas in South Trinidad, Siparia, Pinal, Debe, you will have areas that were once agricultural areas. Some of it was rice was planted there, and much of the land, some of the land has been backfilled, and it has now become communities where people live. And we're talking about full communities, so that areas that once looked like lagoon and rice lands now have full communities. So we're talking about churches and temples and mosques and recreation facilities. And these areas are susceptible to flooding. And the rivers that pass through these communities passed through there 100 years ago, so that the areas that we have made human settlements, those areas will flood. We have to now adapt to that. And adaptation would mean that if we know we live in an area that is susceptible to flooding, we have to get your sandbags. The regional corporation will provide you with a limited amount of sandbags and sand to assist. Now, the sandbag and the sand is not the panacea or the cure for all for flooding, because what it does, when you actually sandbag your premises, you move the water away from your home, but you will send it to another place in the community. So it's a lot of awareness that we have to, the entire community has to be aware, have to be involved in now, so that we can prepare to evacuate if necessary, and we know where our shelters are. If we are hit by a major hurricane, we would have to know where the shelters are. We would have the evacuation routes all laid out, so that we can save life and limb.
Definitely.
Fantastic.
And final question for Major General Rodney Smart. Considering what you said earlier about there being a higher chance of rainy season that would, have more precipitation, do you foresee any severe circumstances?
Well, because we depend on forecasting models from the Met Services, I wouldn't say that I can foresee, but I certainly want our nation to be prepared. So let us, just like the COVID-19 environment, where the Ministry of Health has said, treat everyone you meet as if that individual has the virus. In the same way, let us treat this hurricane season as if we are going to get a hit. And therefore, from now, let us start preparing ourselves. Because the worst thing that can happen to Trinidad and Tobago, especially after we have not had a severe hurricane for some time, is that we are unprepared.
Right.
So let us get prepared.
And that is a perfect way to end the conversation there. I want to thank you both for joining us this morning, Major General Rodney Smart, CEO of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, and Jerry David, Senior Disaster Management Coordinator, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, joining us this morning and disseminating this very useful information in this time where we need to be prepared as we are now in the 2020 hurricane and wet season.
Before we get to the top, I just want to reiterate one of the things that Major General brought up, which was the kit that you should have at your disposal just to be prepared as part of your being prepared, which would be to store food, water, and supplies that would last you at least 72 hours.
Right. And you mentioned medical supplies as well.
A medical kit as well, and make sure you have your face masks as well, because that's also now going to be part of what you need going forward.
Right, yeah, imagine that. Your emergency kit must include masks now.
Of course, it has to, because this is the new normal, as they say,
Yeah,
right?
yep, as they say.
All right. Well, speaking of normal, normally at the top of the hour, we head to the news, and we have Ria standing by to give us your news update to 7 o'clock. So after that, we'll be back with you guys. Keep it locked in our morning show.